Good afternoon, everybody. This is the news with b.c.begley. I am your host, and it's Tuesday, October the 28th, 2025, and here are your top news stories for today. Hurricane Melissa, a Category 5 storm and the strongest tropical cyclone of the year, has so far killed at least 7 people across the northern Caribbean. The hurricane is expected to make landfall in Jamaica today before moving toward Cuba and the Bahamas. 3 people in Jamaica died while preparing for the storm, while 3 others were killed in Haiti and 1 in the Dominican Republic. Authorities have issued hurricane warnings for Jamaica, Cuba, the Bahamas, the Turks and Caicos, warning of catastrophic winds, flooding, and storm surges up to 13 feet, People magazine has reported. Jamaican officials have mobilized emergency forces and ordered evacuations as the nation braces for what experts call, quote, the storm of the century. Food banks and pantries across the United States are bracing for a surge in demand as federal food aid may be paused due to the ongoing government shutdown. Many organizations were already strained after earlier cuts to federal hunger relief programs. In Indianapolis, Central Christian Church's food pantry saw twice its usual number of visitors over the weekend, reflecting the growing crisis. The potential halt of the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, also known as SNAP, which helps about 40 million Americans buy groceries, could leave millions without food assistance starting on November the 1st, the Associated Press has reported. Charities warn they cannot replace federal support as demand rises amid ongoing economic challenges and reduced funding. House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer is urging the Department of Justice to investigate former President Joe Biden's use of an autopin and alleged concealment of cognitive decline. The GOP-led committee released a 100-page report accusing Biden's aides of hiding his condition and questioning whether he personally approved executive actions, including the pardons. Comer's report claims that Hunter Biden was involved in discussions about controversial pardons near the end of Biden's presidency. The report also criticizes former White House physician Dr. Kevin O'Connor for allegedly refusing to conduct a cognitive exam and for invoking the Fifth Amendment during questioning. Comer asked the D.C. Board of Medicine to investigate O'Connor for potential misconduct. The committee interviewed 14 witnesses over 3 months, but said none of them admitted concerns about Biden's mental health. Democrats and Biden allies dismissed the report as politically motivated and baseless, Fox News has reported. A Biden spokesperson stated the investigation proved Biden made his own decisions as president. Representative Robert Garcia, the committee's top Democrat, called it a, quote, sham investigation, and then urged Republicans to focus on ending the government shutdown. Former President Biden has publicly reaffirmed that he personally made all presidential decisions during his term. The Democrats faced internal strain on Monday as the federal employee union, AFGE, urged them to accept a Republican-backed, quote, clean funding bill to end the 4-week government shutdown. While party leaders like Senator Dick Durbin and Senator Chuck Schumer resisted immediate concessions, the union's stance intensified pressure amid growing hardships for federal workers, military members, and benefit recipients. Some Democrats, such as Senator Mark Warner, signaled caution as frustration mounted across both parties. Republicans pointed to the union's plea as evidence that the Democrats should relent, though they remain divided on how to ease specific shutdown impacts, Politico has reported. Despite the tension, Democrats largely maintained their strategy of blaming President Donald Trump for the stalemate, as he was traveling abroad. A Utah judge ruled that Tyler Robinson, accused of murdering conservative activist Charlie Kirk, can wear civilian clothing during pretrial hearings, but must remain in restraints. Robinson's attorneys argued that jail attire could bias potential jurors due to extensive media coverage, while prosecutors cited safety and identification concerns. Judge Tony Groff said Robinson's presumption of innocence outweighs the minimal inconvenience of allowing civilian clothing, but emphasized that the severity of the charges, potentially carrying life or death penalties, necessitates restraints for safety. The court also barred media from photographing or recording Robinson in the restraints, and allowed defense counsel to request adjustments if the restraints hinder communication, ABC News has reported. Robinson, who has not yet entered a plea, is charged with aggravated murder, firearm offenses, obstruction, witness tampering, and a violent crime in the presence of a child. Prosecutors are planning to seek the death penalty. The Trump administration is reportedly considering replacing up to 12 senior field office leaders at ICE with officials from U.S. Customs and Border Protection to increase deportations. The move, driven by advisor Corey Lewandowski, DHS Secretary Kristi Noem, and Commander-at-Large Greg Bovino, would mark a shift from ICE's usual in-house promotions. Bovino has faced criticism from a federal judge over allegedly ignoring a court order, but has been praised internally by DHS leadership. The changes would affect field offices from Los Angeles to Philadelphia, ABC News has reported. DHS emphasized its focus on enforcing immigration laws, though no personnel changes have been officially announced. United States President Donald Trump and Japan's new Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi celebrated a, quote, new golden age in U.S.-Japanese relations during a Tokyo meeting on Tuesday. They signed a deal for Japan to purchase tactical missiles for its U.S.-made F-35 jets and a memorandum of understanding for constructing new ships. The leaders also agreed on a plan to secure critical minerals and rare earth supply chains amid China's export restrictions. Takaichi praised Trump's impact on global peace and said that she would nominate him for the Nobel Peace Prize, the DW has reported. Both emphasized strengthened economic and security cooperation between their nations. Okay, here's a look at the live national weather radar from the National Weather Service. And now let's roll right into the national weather forecast for today. Showers and thunderstorms are expected Tuesday across the Carolinas and the southern mid-Atlantic, bringing gusty coastal winds, heavy rain, and minor flooding near the Outer Banks. A large storm system will spread widespread rain and thunderstorms from the Mississippi Valley to the Appalachians and the Mid-Atlantic through Wednesday, with locally heavy rainfall and isolated flash flooding possible. Cooler than average temperatures will persist across the central and eastern United States, with highs mainly in the 50s and in the 60s. In the west, a Pacific system will bring rain to lower elevations and snow to higher elevations of the Pacific Northwest before tapering off early on Wednesday. And as the system departs, a ridge will build, leading to warmer than normal temperatures across the western United States, including in the 90s in the desert Southwest. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has accused Hamas of violating the U.S.-brokered ceasefire, after remains returned by the group did not match any of the 13 bodies that are still listed as missing, and were identified as an Israeli found by the IDF in December of 2023. Under the ceasefire, Hamas was required to return all Israeli remains, and to date, about 15 have been returned, while a reported 13 still remain unaccounted for. Several Israeli far-right ministers reacted with fury, demanding forceful action and urging Netanyahu to resume full-scale operations to eliminate Hamas. Netanyahu said he would convene an emergency meeting to weigh possible responses, with options reported to include expanding IDF control inside of Gaza or halting entry of humanitarian aid, The Guardian has reported. Hamas has said it does not know the whereabouts of all of the bodies because some of the units holding captives were killed during Israeli airstrikes. Separately, Israeli forces said that they killed 3 Palestinians near Jenin in a raid. Reports indicate mass killings and other atrocities in El Fasher after Sudan's paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, also known as the RSF, took control of the city over the weekend. Video and satellite evidence suggest RSF fighters are carrying out summary executions and door-to-door operations targeting several communities, with the joint forces alleging that more than 2,000 civilians have so far been killed. Tens of thousands of civilians still remain trapped without aid, with over 26,000 fleeing since Sunday, many heading to Tooele, where hospitals are overwhelmed with casualties. United Nations officials and rights groups have warned of ethnically motivated atrocities, reminiscent of past RSF massacres in Darfur, The Guardian has reported. The RSF now controls all 5 Darfur state capitals, marking a major shift in the war and raising fears of Sudanese territorial fragmentation. Tetsuya Yamagami, accused of killing former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, pleaded guilty on the first day of his trial in Tokyo, admitting that, quote, everything is true. Yamagami used a homemade gun to shoot Abe during a 2022 campaign event in Nara, killing him and sparking global shock. He told investigators he targeted Abe because he blamed him for promoting the Unification Church, which Yamagami said financially ruined his mother through large donations. The assassination prompted investigations into the church, leading to ministerial resignations and earlier this year, a Tokyo court ordering its disbandment and asset liquidation, the BBC has reported. Yamagami denies violating arms control laws, arguing his homemade gun did not fall under the legal category of firearms, and the trial is expected to continue until January. Paris authorities are continuing a manhunt after a $102 million jewel heist at the Louvre Museum, amid concerns that, quote, hasty disclosures of 2 arrests over the weekend could harm the investigation, the Paris prosecutor has said. 2 men in their 30s from a Paris suburb were arrested after attempting to travel to Algeria and Mali. Both have past burglary records and dual citizenship. Investigators matched DNA from a helmet left at the scene to one suspect and believed both played active roles in the October 19th theft, in which thieves used a stolen truck with a cherry picker to access the Apollo Gallery and cut into the display cases. Stolen items included crowns, tiaras, and other diamond and gem-encrusted pieces, some associated with Napoleon and French royalty. One crown was recovered damaged on the street, ABC News has reported. Louvre officials cited weaknesses in perimeter security and blind spots in cameras, while investigators are exploring whether any insider may have assisted the thieves. Venezuela has suspended energy agreements with Trinidad and Tobago, citing, quote, hostile actions after the island nation hosted the United States warship USS Gravely for joint naval exercises. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro accused Trinidad of acting as a, quote, aircraft carrier of the U.S. empire, and announced a withdrawal from treaties signed a decade ago, following a recommendation from the vice president. Trinidad's prime minister defended the exercises as routine for, quote, internal security, emphasizing that her country's economic plans are independent of Venezuela. Tensions are fueled by U.S. strikes on Venezuelan speedboats, allegedly carrying drugs to the United States, which Trinidad has supported as part of anti-drug operations, the Associated Press has reported. The military buildup in the southern Caribbean, including the deployment of an aircraft carrier and multiple warships, has heightened Venezuelan fears of U.S. interference and potential attempts to oust Maduro. Lithuania has closed its border with Belarus, following repeated, quote, constant violations of its airspace by dozens of helium balloons, officials announced on Monday. The Prime Minister called the incidents, quote, a hybrid threat, and warned that the armed forces would take, quote, all necessary measures to shoot down intruding balloons. The European Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen, described the incursions as provocations and expressed full EU solidarity with Lithuania. The violations come amid heightened NATO vigilance after multiple airspace breaches by Russian drones and fighter jets in Poland, Romania, and Estonia, with NATO launching the, quote, Eastern Sentry mission to reinforce Eastern Europe, CNN has reported. European leaders are using these incidents to pressure Moscow toward negotiations to end the war in Ukraine. Today is October the 28th, 2025, and on this day in history, in the year 1492, Christopher Columbus sighted Cuba and claimed it for Spain. In the year 1886, The Statue of Liberty was officially dedicated in New York Harbor by U.S. President Grover Cleveland, and in the year 1940, Italian forces under Benito Mussolini invaded Greece, initiating the Greco-Italian War. October the 28th is also National Chocolate Day. Okay, it's 15 past the hour, and we're going to do a quick market update. The Nasdaq is up 0.59%. Gold is down 0.54%. Oil is down 1.87%. Bitcoin is up 1.17%. The Dow Jones is up 0.57%. And the S&P 500 is up 0.25%. And now we'll go into the top U.S. national news stories for today. The United States Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, has announced that U.S. forces struck 4 suspected drug vessels in the Eastern Pacific, killing 14 alleged narco-terrorists and wounding or capturing 1 survivor. He said all of the strikes occurred in international waters, no U.S. personnel were harmed, and that the operations were carried out at President Donald Trump's direction against designated terrorist organizations trafficking narcotics. Hegseth gave a breakdown of the incidents: 8 killed in the first strike, 4 killed in the second, and 3 killed in the third, and said that U.S. Southcom activated search and rescue protocols, with Mexican authorities taking responsibility for the survivor. He warned that the department will treat narco-terrorists like other terrorist threats, asserting that they have killed more Americans than Al-Qaeda and vowing to track and eliminate them, Fox News has reported. Officials also noted dozens of suspected traffickers have been killed since September the 2nd, including a prior strike in the Caribbean that killed 6 members of Tren de Agua. New York's Governor Kathy Hochul said on Monday she initially misheard a Tax the Rich chant at a Sunday rally for New York City mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani, thinking instead the crowd was shouting, "Let's go Bills," in support of the NFL team. She acknowledged later that the crowd was expressing passion for taxing the wealthy, emphasizing her role as Democratic Party leader to unify behind Mamdani. Hochul formally endorsed Mamdani in September after he upset former Governor Andrew Cuomo in the Democratic primary. The rally featured audible chants of "Tax the Rich" as Hochul spoke, The Hill has reported. Mamdani, a young Democratic socialist, is now facing Cuomo, who is running as an independent in the general election. An off-duty San Bernardino County Sheriff's deputy ended a high-speed chase on Monday by using an unmarked vehicle to stop a motorcyclist wanted in the killing of Deputy Andrew Nunez. Nunez, a 6-year veteran, was shot in the head after responding to a report of a man threatening a woman with a gun in Rancho Cucamonga and then later died at a hospital. The suspect fled on a motorcycle at speeds exceeding 150 miles per hour along the 210 freeway in Upland before being stopped by the off-duty police officer. The motorcyclist was hospitalized and is expected to be booked on suspicion of murder once he's released, NBC News has reported. California Governor Gavin Newsom ordered flags at the state capitol to fly at half-staff, praising Nunez's courage and dedication to law enforcement. The pressure to end the second-longest federal government shutdown is mounting as millions of Americans face lost food assistance, delayed paychecks, and travel disruptions. The nation's largest federal employee union, AFGE, urged Congress to pass a clean funding bill immediately, calling for an end to political gamemanship. Democratic senators, including Tim Kaine, are pressing for guarantees against mass federal layoffs and extensions of health care plan subsidies under the Affordable Care Act. The shutdown, now entering its 4th week, threatens pay for 1.3 million active duty service members and could leave 42 million Americans without food assistance, the Associated Press has reported. The Trump administration has rejected using contingency funds or reimbursing states to maintain the benefits, heightening urgency for a resolution. Bill Gates now believes that climate change is serious but not civilization ending, and he urges a, quote, strategic pivot from focusing solely on limiting temperature rise to prioritizing poverty reduction and disease prevention. In a memo ahead of the United Nations Climate Conference, Gates argued that resources should target the most effective ways to improve human life, especially in the world's poorest countries, even if that means accepting minor increases in global temperature. He emphasizes health initiatives like eradicating malaria as more urgent than small reductions in warming, reflecting his work with the Gates Foundation and Breakthrough Energy. Scientists largely agree on prioritizing human well-being, but caution that Gates's approach oversimplifies climate dynamics and risks ignoring long-term environmental consequences, NBC News has reported. Gates maintains that a stable climate remains critical, but his memo seeks to spark debate on balancing immediate human needs with long-term climate action. A 28-year-old man allegedly stabbed two 17-year-old boys with a fork and attempted to assault a flight crew member on a Lufthansa flight from Chicago to Germany, forcing the plane to divert to Boston. One of the victims was stabbed in the shoulder and the other in the back of the head, while the suspect also made threatening gestures and slapped a female passenger. The suspect is an Indian national, previously on a student visa, but currently without lawful status in the United States, and he's charged with assault with a dangerous weapon on an aircraft, CNN has reported. The incident occurred amid ongoing aviation delays and staffing issues linked to the government shutdown, and if convicted, he faces up to 10 years in prison and a $250,000 fine. Indiana's Governor Mike Braun has called a special legislative session starting on November the 3rd to consider redrawing the state's congressional map, aiming to ensure fair representation, though GOP support remains uncertain. The move aligns Indiana with other Republican-led states, including Texas, Missouri, and North Carolina, where mid-decade redistricting efforts aim to bolster the party's House majority ahead of 2026. President Donald Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance have actively lobbied Indiana Republicans, but divisions persist, with some lawmakers resisting pressure and calling for cautious deliberation. Mid-decade redistricting has also sparked Democratic counter-efforts in states like California, Virginia, and New York, where voters and lawmakers challenge maps that they see as diluting minority voting power, NBC News has reported. The broader trend reflects an aggressive partisan push nationwide to reshape congressional representation before the next election cycle. Hey everybody, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you can stay up to date on all of our news updates and our live show. And now let's go into the last block of news for today. Amazon announced that it will cut about 14,000 corporate jobs, part of ongoing efforts to reduce cost and streamline operations while investing in generative AI. The layoffs, affecting nearly every department, could ultimately impact up to 30,000 employees, representing roughly 4% of its corporate and tech workforce. The CEO emphasized the need for a leaner structure to move faster and adapt to AI-driven efficiencies, following similar cuts across other tech giants, CNBC has reported. Despite these reductions, Amazon plans to continue hiring in strategic areas and seasonal roles, while investing heavily in AI and cloud infrastructure. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton is suing Johnson & Johnson and its spin-off Kenvue, alleging they failed to warn consumers about the risks of taking Tylenol during pregnancy. The lawsuit claims the companies ignored scientific studies linking prenatal Tylenol use to autism and ADHD, and that Johnson & Johnson illegally shifted liability to Kenvue to protect its assets. Paxton accused the companies of endangering consumers for profit and vowed to hold them accountable, USA Today has reported. Experts and medical organizations, however, caution that current studies do not establish a causal link between Tylenol use during pregnancy and autism. SpaceX launched 28 Starlink satellites on October the 27th aboard a Falcon 9 rocket from Vandenberg Space Force Base in California. The rocket's first stage successfully landed on the drone ship Of Course I Still Love You, marking its 17th flight, while the upper stage delivered the satellites into low Earth orbit. This launch was SpaceX's 137th Falcon 9 mission of the year, and the third in just 3 days, continuing the build-out of the Starlink megaconstellation, Space.com has reported. To date, SpaceX has launched over 10,000 Starlink satellites, with nearly 8,750 active, and plans to expand the network to around 30,000 satellites in the coming years. The Federal Reserve is expected to cut its key interest rate on Wednesday, likely reducing it from 4.1% to around 3.9%, as the central bank seeks to support a slowing job market. This would be the second rate cut of the year, with another possible in December, despite inflation remaining elevated. Economic uncertainty is heightened by the government shutdown, which has delayed key jobs and inflation data, making it harder for the Fed to gauge the economy, the Associated Press has reported. While hiring has slowed considerably, overall growth remains solid, prompting Fed officials to move cautiously and adjust rates carefully based on upcoming data. Home price growth slowed for the seventh consecutive month in August, rising just 1.5% year over year, the smallest increase in over 2 years. This according to the S&P CoreLogic Case-Shiller data. The slowdown benefits buyers as mortgage rates ease and inventory grows, improving affordability after years of rapid price gains. Among major cities, New York saw the largest increase at 6.1%, while Tampa and Miami experienced declines of 3.3% and 1.7% respectively, Bloomberg has reported. Experts say the market is reaching a new equilibrium, with price growth now running well below inflation and the pandemic-era boom coming to an end. A plane crash in Kenya killed 11 people, mostly foreign tourists, when it was flying to a national reserve. The victims included 8 Hungarians, 2 Germans, and the Kenyan pilot. The aircraft went down in a hilly, forested area about 25 miles from an airstrip amid heavy rain, and the wreckage was found burned, leaving unrecognizable remains, CBS News has reported. Authorities are investigating the cause, and the airline said its priority is supporting the victims' families. Cameroon's 92-year-old president, Paul Biya, has been declared the winner of the recent election, securing an 8th term with 53.66% of the vote, while challenger Issa Tichiroma Bakari received 35.19% of the vote. Biya has been in power since 1982, and he removed presidential term limits back in 2008, and he has consistently won re-election by large margins. Tichiroma, who claimed victory days after the election with his own tally, denounced the official results as a, quote, masquerade, and reported violence against civilians in several regions, The Guardian has reported. The country has been tense, with bans on public gatherings, business closures, and internet restrictions amid fears of unrest following the election. 2 Russian cosmonauts will perform a spacewalk today outside of the International Space Station to install experiment hardware on a module and relocate a control panel for its European robotic arm. NASA will stream the spacewalk and provide limited technical commentary despite most agency activities being paused due to the government shutdown. This marks the second spacewalk in less than 2 weeks for Expedition 73, Space.com has reported. Their previous spacewalk on October the 16th included installing a semiconductor experiment and an old HD TV camera. Okay, everybody, that's it. That's all I got. That's our show for today. I hope everybody enjoyed it. I will see everyone tomorrow at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time for another episode of The News with BC. And until then, I hope everybody has a wonderful day.